chapter 21. There will be signs in the sun, the moon and the stars, and on the earth, distress among nations, confused by the roaring of the sea and the waves. People will faint from fear and foreboding of what is coming upon the world, for the powers of the heavens will be shaken. Then they will see the Son of Man coming in a cloud with power and great glory. Now when these things begin to take place, stand up and raise your heads, because your redemption is drawing near. Then he told them a parable. Look at the fig tree and all the trees. And as soon as they sprout leaves, you can see for yourselves and know that summer is already near. So also, when you see these things taking place, you know that the kingdom of God is near you. Truly I tell you, this generation will not pass away until all things have taken place. Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will not pass away. Be on guard, so that your hearts are not weighed down with dissipation and drunkenness and the worries of this life, and that day does not catch you unexpectedly like a trap. For it will come upon all who live on the face of the whole earth. Be alert at all times, praying that you may have the strength to escape all these things that will take place and to stand before the Son of Man.
Mary Carr is a memoirist, a poet. She teaches at the University of Syracuse University. And she had a rough life. She had a mother who was pretty much out of her mind, chased her and her sister when they were kids with a butcher knife, because she was really upset with them for some reason, apparently mad enough to kill them. She shot at all of her husbands. There were bullet holes in the floor and walls of the kitchen to prove it, and she had many husbands, so there were many bullet holes. The mom was an alcoholic. Her dad was an alcoholic. Mary became an alcoholic because life became so difficult for her. She had also been sexually abused by the neighbor kids. So all these things piling up on her, all of this despair that she just couldn't shake off of her shoulders, and so she turned to the bottle. That time couldn't come early enough in the day when it was somehow acceptable to crack open even just a beer. That she got to the point that she'd drop her son off at daycare and have a case of beer in the trunk waiting as soon as she dropped him off, 8 o'clock in the morning, 7 o'clock in the morning, didn't matter. And she'd go through a whole case, and it just wasn't enough to quiet the demons in her mind. Nighttime would find her sitting out on the veranda, drinking whiskey until she couldn't see straight, and then passing out, waking up to do it again. She felt guilty when she'd get upset at her son for interrupting her private time. Her marriage eventually fell apart, and that went away. Not that they ever had a really good marriage. But she just kept beating herself against the wall, kept telling herself that she was going to quit, she was going to quit, and then she'd say, who am I kidding? And she'd go and find that hidden bottle in the tank of the toilet or in the clothes basket or wherever she was hiding them at the time. She'd always go back to the bottle. And she finally with the right people around her, the right people who said, you know what, you got to quit the pity party, you got to quit feeling down on yourself, you got to quit blaming the world for all of your troubles and pull off your big girl britches. And she was finally able to stay off the bottle for a while, but the temptation was so great. It was so hard for her with all these voices in her head telling her how terrible life was to just leave the bottle alone. And so all of these friends and sponsors that she'd met in AA, have you found your higher power yet? Have you found your higher power? Did you start praying? Oh, good God, are you serious? Praying? What a terrible, silly thing to do. Crying out your voice like a little ninny to something that doesn't even exist. That's just foolishness. Until she loaded up the car with a hose and some tape so that she could drive out to the reservoir and tape it up to the exhaust pipe and kill herself. And something out here said, no, this isn't how it's going to be. And so she went to what she called the mental Marriott and checked herself in, knowing that something wasn't right if she had gone this far. She was sober. She was sober, but just barely. And so she checked herself in there, and seeing all the people, all the problems that they had had, one woman who had multiple personalities because she'd been raped multiple times by her stepfather and her brother and all of these horrible things that happened to these people. And she finally found herself at this point where she noticed that her roommate had all these cuts all over her. And she said, how did you manage to do that? How could you get anything in here to even be able to do it? We don't have access to dangerous objects. She says, oh, they let me have a light bulb in the bathroom. At that point, Mary felt, this whole God thing isn't about me. It's for her, for everyone like her. And so, ironically, she finds herself on her knees in the bathroom, not because she was drunk again, but because she was too ashamed, too embarrassed to get on her knees and pray in front of other people. So she went in the bathroom and she shut the door. Said, if you are out there, you SOB, do something. That same plea that led her to become a devout Catholic and to find faith and to find God is the same plea that so many of us cry out, especially when we see a verse like this. Some kind of a promise that in the dying of the light that Jesus is going to show up and make everything okay. Because we have TVs, we watch the news, we see the tsunamis and the earthquakes and ISIS and children being beheaded. We see Syrian refugees being turned away because they just might be terrorists. So they're left at home to die. We see these things. We see people who are hurting. We see people in pain, people who are sad, who are despairing, who can't imagine that there's any hope left in this God-forsaken world, who are waiting for Jesus to come back and do something. But it doesn't happen. We're still sitting here waiting. Once again, another Advent, another promise of the coming of Emmanuel, God with us, and here we are all alone, all by our lonesomes, waiting for Jesus to come and make it all better, but no, ain't gonna happen. We'll be sitting here again next year saying the same thing, having our pity party, because for some reason God refuses to do anything. Maybe God's got a sixth sense of humor. Maybe God's laughing right now. Maybe God says, hey, you know what? You created your own problems. Good luck. Deal with it. Maybe God is saying, I sent Jesus to make it all better, and you killed him. Idiots. I have no idea. No idea what God is saying right now, because it's just so difficult for so many people who feel the light is fading. And they want to rage against the dying of the light, but they don't have any strength left. They're waiting for God to do something, but instead their prayers still go unanswered. They're given through all of these things that the passage says. The dissipation and drunkenness, getting weighed down by the worries of this life, and letting everything that happens to catch them unexpectedly. But what if we're waiting for something that really wasn't supposed to happen in the first place? What if this is yet again one of these instances where we completely miss the point, where we're taking an apocalyptic text like Revelation, right, and creating what they call an eschatology that tells us that the end times are upon us, Jesus is going to come back and make it better, but things are going to get a whole lot worse first. What if we're taking that language and we're putting it on top of the gospel, and we're reading the gospel through that lens? That says things are bad, they're going to get worse, but Jesus is going to come and help us out. What if we're missing the fact that Jesus told the disciples so many times, how long do I have to be with you, you wicked and sinful generation? When are you going to start doing things for yourself? When are you going to start taking the things that I taught you and putting them into practice so the people around you are not suffering while you sit on your hands and get on your knees and pray to me to do something when I have showed you how to do it yourself? Yeah. Yeah, there are times when that's really difficult. There are times when we feel like we don't have enough strength to get through the day on our own, let alone reaching out to help somebody else. Those days aren't few and far between. For some of us, they're many. Then what? It's in those moments when somebody feels so much weight on their shoulders, especially this time of year. How the heck am I going to get Christmas presents for the kids? How am I going to afford that? How am I going to afford the next mortgage payment and not end up out on the street and living in a refrigerator box? Then, when the sickness has gotten so bad and the pain is so unbearable that they're lying on the floor with their face in the ground, writhing and kicking their feet because the pain is just too much to bear for one more day. Then, when it feels like life cannot go on, and who even cares if it does, because things have gotten so doggone difficult that I don't even care if I live or if I die. Then, when they're kneeling at the toilet saying, God, I did it again. I got myself so drunk because I was so despairing, and I feel terrible, and I'll never do it again. But then somebody like Mary Carr says, who am I kidding? I'll be here again tomorrow, saying the same thing. Saying the same prayer to a God I don't believe in. Crying out, wishing that I hadn't gone and done this. But knowing we're going to do it again. Souls. Then, when your soul is broken, through that crack in your soul will shine a light. Emmanuel. God with us. The light of God will illuminate a path before us that was always there. We just didn't see it. A path of endless possibility, endless imagination, hope, something to hold on to, something to lift us up when we're weighed down by the world, something concrete, something new, the birth of new beginnings, advent of hope. And the dying of the light around us is getting so dark. Then, and only then, will we be able to see that faint light, that light that shines in the darkness will not and cannot overcome because it is too strong. When we finally have the awareness to see that it's there, it'll get brighter and brighter, and the darkness will fade. And from that will be the advent of our hope. God with us, and God with you all.